Moving into the face brush category, I have narrowed it down to 5 essentials, but then like I did in the eye category, I'll share with you a couple of others. But in this set, there are going to be differences between what type of product you prefer. So whether you prefer cream or powder, that is going to determine what type of brush you use. Now, if you use both, there might be a reason why you might need 2 brushes. So let's go ahead. We're going to start first in the foundation category because I feel like this is the one that has the most options. So in foundation, I have multiple brush options, and then I also have 2 sponge options I'm going to tell you about. Okay, for brushes, if you're looking for fuller coverage in your foundation, you are going to want to apply your foundation with a dense brush. With that, there are varying levels of denseness and varying levels of size of brushes, etc. So let me give you a couple of options, and we're looking at the broad range of budget here as well. Okay, starting off, we're going to start with this e.l.f. brush. This is the ultimate blending brush. And what I personally look for in a foundation brush is denseness of bristles. So you can see this one has quite a bit of density, but this one, these bristles are a little more flexible than a couple of the others I'll show you. So what that means is you're not going to get quite as intense of application, but it is going to allow you to just buff that foundation into your skin and get a really nice flawless finish, but still helping you keep the coverage level that you want. Now, 2 others that are also buffing brushes, but you'll be able to tell these are even more dense. There's just a difference in size. So this brush is even more dense than the e.l.f. one, and you can see when I put my finger through, I mean, those bristles do not bend much at all, versus this one, I mean, I can bend those way back. These hold their shape because there are so many bristles. Now, what all of these brushes do also have in common is that the edge of the brush is those bristles are slightly shorter. And so that allows you to get around the nose and in every little area of the face. A rounded brush like these will help you get a more even buffed experience. So this one is the Sedona Lace 480, and this is another brush that I have had for probably 10 years. It's held up very well, super soft bristles, but again, it's going to give you some of the fullest coverage of foundation. And then the other one that's very similar is the Morphe M439, and this one is just more about the size of the brush. You're going to be able to cover greater territory on your face and get your foundation on quicker. Now, another favorite brush that is actually very budget friendly, if you buy it in a set, is this Eco Tools. This is called the Ultimate Buffing Brush. Comes in a set with 2 other smaller versions of it. This brush I find particularly useful if your foundation is more of a watery consistency. You know I love the KVD Portrait Foundation. It's not being made anymore, but this is a very water-like consistency, and this is the perfect brush for that. Again, it gets it buffed into your skin super quick. The bristles are very short and dense, so you don't have a lot of movement. So it's going to keep the coverage level there, but also blend it into the skin quickly. The last foundation brush is the most expensive that I'm sharing with you today, but it is a wonderful, unique brush, and this is the BK Beauty 101. I bought one of these for my best friend for Christmas, and she had had it on her wish list for a while. And after she used it, she understood what the hype is all about. This is just a wonderful brush. It is angled, it is dense. There is some flexibility with those bristles, but it is so dense and soft. It allows you to really get up as close as you want to into all the crevices, but you can also kind of pat it in areas to add more coverage. It just is a wonderful brush and definitely one worth saving up your money to purchase. Okay, let's go into the last two tools for the foundation application. So if you're somebody who says, Sherry Lee, I don't like a full coverage application of foundation, or you want an option to not always wear your full coverage foundation in a full coverage manner, then you're gonna wanna opt for a beauty sponge that you dampen before you apply your foundation. So this is dampened, so it has expanded the size of it. This particular sponge is one of my favorites. It comes in a set of 5 on Amazon, and it ranges in price from around $8 to $10 for the set of 5. These are really good quality. One will last you for quite a while. You can wash it and reuse it several times. Now, many times I will hear somebody say, oh, a sponge is going to give you fuller application. I don't agree with that logic because you have dampened the sponge, and so therefore there's a little bit of water in there that is slightly diluting your foundation as it goes on your face. So when I use this with my Bare Pro foundation, it's going to give me a less full coverage look, a little more of a natural look. It does, however, give you a really nice, smooth finish. You don't have any brush strokes. It is something you can use in conjunction with a brush. You can apply it with your brush and then just go over it to remove any excess foundation. Now, the other beauty sponge is completely different. Not only does it look different, does it feel different, it's memory foam, but very different than your memory foam mattress. This is the Stands Out sponge. And what's different about this is after about the 5th time you've used it, you no longer need to wet the sponge. Therefore, you are getting the smooth application you would get from using a beauty sponge, but it's not diluted with the water that you've used to soften this. So you can get full coverage application with a sponge, and it really does also make your application of your foundation go on very quickly. The next brush that I personally find essential is a powder brush. Now, if you never wear powder, you can just skip right over this brush. But for me personally, these two are my top favorites. If you stay tuned through the next couple of brushes, you're gonna see some other options of brushes that could be used in multiple ways. But for just a straight up powder brush, and I mean, you could use these for bronzer, but let's face it, you're gonna get a lot of bronzer all over your face. So I love this one from Sigma. This is the F30, or this one from BK Beauty, and this is the 105 brush. Now, both of these are pretty dense, but you can see the BK Beauty one is even more dense. So what's the difference in application? The more dense the brush is, the more powder you're going to be able to pack on and in a quicker fashion. So you could also use these brushes, either one, if you like to use a mineral foundation, either one of these would work. But this one in particular is great for mineral foundation because, as we were talking about the dense foundation brushes, this is similar, and because the bristles aren't as flimsy, you can get a lot more coverage. So when it comes to setting powder, as an oily girl, I really want to pack on the powder. So this is going to allow me to apply the powder in a very quick manner and get a little more powder because I want to keep my oils at bay. But the Sigma brush also, both of these are super soft, but the Sigma brush, you can see there is a little more flexibility in those bristles, but it's still quite dense. So you can still get a good amount of powder and you can buff it on your face and you are good to go. Now let's move into bronzing and contouring. So I feel like this is another brush that is essential for makeup application. Now, depending on whether you use a cream product for this or a powder is going to determine what brush I would recommend. Also, if you're somebody who doesn't like a real structured contour, but you like to add bronzer, that is going to determine a different type of brush for you. So let's start off with contour. If you're somebody who prefers a powder contour, I'm going to show you basically 2 brushes. So the first one is one you see me use almost every time in a video, and it is the Sigma F05. Why I love this is it is rounded on the top. The bristles are flexible, but they still have some density to them. So it allows me to apply and buff out the contour in the hollows of the cheeks. I can also easily go along the jawline, around the hairline, and it allows me to blend out that powder contour as I go. Now, if you're somebody who doesn't like quite that much precision with your contour, the other option I would recommend is the Sedona Lace 919 brush. And this makes quicker work of it. So you can still fit this kind of in the hollows of your cheeks, but you're gonna get a much more diffused application to begin with. And you can really buff it out. And you could also use this as a bronzer brush as well. Now, staying with contour, if you are a cream contour person, there are 3 options that I'm going to give you. And you can see they all have a similar concept here. They're all angled. I feel like when it comes to applying a cream, the easiest way to make sure that you get diffused line, but still keep the contour where it's supposed to be and not get it out of control, is by going in with an angled brush. This first one is from Sedona Lace. It's a 602. It is super dense, but yet there is a little bit of flexibility, but you'll notice the edge of the bristles, again, they are slightly tapered on either side, which allows you to get a really nice diffused blend as you go up the face. So again, this works around the hairline. Another one that's almost identical, just slightly smaller and slightly more dense, but still has a little bit of flexibility, is this one from Real Techniques. And this is the sculpting brush, appropriately named. The other one in this little family here is the e.l.f. angled buffing brush. Now, unlike these two, this one really doesn't have the taper of the bristles down the sides, but it still is a really nice, what you can do with this one is you can actually hold it in the contour of the cheek and apply and then buff up. So rather than going on the side and then buffing, this one I would be using kind of angled up, but it fits really nicely in the contour of the cheek and you can easily buff it. It's super soft bristles. They are dense, but have that little bit of flexibility, and this is at a great price. Now, if you're somebody who says, Shirley, I don't like to do contouring, I don't need that, but you like to do bronzing, my top 2 favorite bronzing brushes are these, and they're at complete opposite ends of the spectrum of price. So this one is the BK Beauty 103. You'll see it is slightly pinched. This one, again, it has those tapered bristles on either side. It does have quite a bit. There are a lot of bristles, but they're very flexible. But because it's slightly pinched versus our big old powder brush, you can be a little more precise with where you're putting that bronzer. So as I was talking about these powder brushes, you could use them for bronzer, but you might need to pinch down the brush, but then that's not going to help you have as much flexibility with that brush. So by using this one, you can apply that bronzer at the tops of the cheeks, around kind of the top of your forehead. So remember, bronzer is applied to the places where the sun hits your face first. So tops of the cheeks, top of the nose, the area right above your brows here. And so this is a great brush. The other one, though, that I have loved for years, super great quality and a great price, is this EcoTools Full Powder Brush. Now this one you could use for setting powder as well, but again, you can't use it for setting powder and bronzer and then go back to setting powder because you'll be putting bronzer all over your face. So keep that in mind. But this brush is so soft, but it does have that little bit of a point at the top, which allows you to be a little more precise with that bronzer. But again, it has the tapered bristles, so you can then blend it out and make it really softly diffused. This is another great brush if I'm really in a hurry and I need to really bronze up my whole face. I will pull this out and it makes quick work of that. It's also a great brush for adding bronzer down the neck if you ever need to do that. So this is a great brush and it's at a very affordable price. The fourth essential brush is a blush brush, and this again is determined by what formulation you prefer. So if you are somebody who prefers using a cream blush, you can of course use your good old fingers, but I always feel every time I do that, I end up with patchy blush or it's pigmented, super pigmented, and I can't get it blended out before it sets. So my favorite blush brush for cream blushes is the Luxe Tapered Highlighter Brush. This is the 522. This is the only brush in all of these I'm sharing from Luxe, but Luxe is a great brand of brushes in general. They are offered many times in BoxyCharm boxes as a set, but as I'm looking through the brushes that I reach for on a daily basis, that's why I don't have those included. They are really good brushes though. So this tapered highlighter brush, it has flimsy, flexible brushes, but again, they're tapered on either side and it says it's a tapered highlighter brush, but that's why you don't have to go by that term to tell you how to use it. So I love this for cream blush. You can take your cream blush and wipe it across the top of the blush stick and then apply it to your cheeks. It gives you a wonderful diffused application. You can then build it up slowly. You don't end up with a streak of blush that you're going, I gotta blend it out. So it really helps control the amount of blush you have on your cheeks, but it also really gives you a very nice diffused application quickly. So this is definitely quicker than using your fingers. I know it's hard to believe, but trust me, it is. If you are somebody who prefers a powder blush, there are several great powder blush brushes out there. There's one from Sigma, there's one from BK Beauty, but I'm gonna show you my top two favorites. The first brush is from Morphe, and it's the E4. This brush is perfection, in my way of thinking, for blush application because not only is it an angled brush, so it really helps you be able to kind of get a smaller amount here towards the cheek, the apple of the cheek, and then blend it up. But the density of the bristles is perfect. It is not as dense as this angled brush. So the difference here, I mean, do you see how many bristles there are and how immovable? I mean, there's some flexibility, but not much. There are not as many bristles here, and you can see how flexible and flimsy those are. The reason why that is so important when it comes to blush is because when you pull out a blush like this, if you go in with a dense bristled brush, you are going to get way too much color all at once on your cheek and you're gonna be in a panic. So this brush, because it is more flexible and there aren't as many bristles on this, this allows you to just tap in your brush and you get a much more diffused application and you can build up slowly. So the E4 is my all-time favorite blush brush. Secondly is this one from Real Techniques, and I've had this so long. This is, I think, from the original sets that they came out with. This little rubber part has gotten even a little sticky. They've changed how they do that, but this is one of the original brushes that they came out with. This is the blush brush, and you'll see it has kind of a nice point. You can also use this for bronzer or powder, but again, if you choose to use this blush in those multiple applications, you might need two brushes because you don't want to be using this in blush and then going in with your setting powder. The last brush that I feel like is essential is a brush that you can use for either setting under the eyes and or for applying powder highlight. Liquid highlight, I feel like, is one of those things that you can easily tap in with your fingers. So I don't feel like you actually need a brush for that. but for powder highlighter or for setting under the eyes, I just think if you're trying to use a brush like this to set under the eyes, it's not going to end well. So I have 3 brushes here that I personally love for setting the under eye. However, this brush is no longer made, so I'm not going to just rave about it because you can't get it anymore, but I wanted to show it because you see it in videos all the time. It's the Sedona Lace 313, but it's very close in shape and size as this one from BK Beauty. So this one from BK Beauty is the 108 brush, and why I love this is it has that slight little point on it, and the bristles, there are a few more bristles in this one than this other one I'm going to share with you, but it is tapered down on the side, so you can really get a nice light application. It fits well under your lash line there, and you can just tap in setting powder. This also, though, is great if you're applying highlighter. You can just run it on the top of the cheek. Now, if you use this for both applications, you are going to make sure you want to clean this off really well before you go in the next day to set your under eyes. Now, the other brush is from Real Techniques, and it's aptly named a setting brush. This also fits really nicely under the eyes, but this one does not have quite as much fluff as this one does. It does have a little more flexibility in the bristles, but you will need to just be careful that you don't pack on too much setting powder. So as you tap into the powder, make sure you tap off the excess, and then you can just gently pat it under the eyes. Same thing as this brush though, you can use this in the area of highlight to highlight the tops of the cheeks, and it works really well for that. Now, as I did with the eye brushes, there are a couple of brushes that I personally use on a daily basis that you might want to consider adding to your collection. The first is a separate highlighting brush, and my favorite is this one from MAC. Now, this came in a kit several years ago. This is the travel size, so the regular size of this one is a full-size handle, but it's the 140 fan brush from MAC. And you've probably seen brushes like these before, like this one. They're huge, and you're like, why would I ever need a brush like that? Well, why these are good for highlighter is because they allow you to just get more of a precise application in one area and then diffuse it. And it really applies the highlighter nicely. And I mean, that's basically how I apply my highlighter every day, and that's it. So it really makes really quick work of powder highlighter. The other brush that you've probably seen me use a lot since it has come out is the concealer brush from BK Beauty. And this is the A506 brush. I love this brush, but this is an example of a brush that currently is only available in a set. So let's now talk about brush sets. Okay, so should you buy a brush set versus buying individual brushes? Well, most brush sets are going to be more economical when you figure out price per brush. However, I personally have never found a perfect brush set that contains only the brushes that I need to use or that I will use. It doesn't mean that you can't find other uses for those brushes, but usually you are going to end up with 2 or more brushes that you rarely use. So that is where you have to just do the calculations and say, is it worth it still to get that discounted set and know that there's probably a couple brushes I'm not going to use, or am I better off purchasing just the single brushes that I know I'm going to use on a daily basis? Now, according to the brushes that I've shared with you today, Sigma has a couple of great brush sets that include many of the brushes that I shared with you today, both face and eye, or just face, or just eye sets. So as you're perusing their website, I'll leave a couple of links to brush sets below that you can check out and determine if that's a better option for you. BK Beauty also has a number of brush sets that include many of the brushes I shared with you today. But again, there are going to be a couple of other brushes in there that you will still find useful, but might not be ones that you reach for every day. So again, I will leave those options down below, but one of those brush sets is the one that is in collaboration with Angie from Hot and Flashy that contains this concealer brush. And she does have a really nice face brush in there that is really good, and a couple of other eye brushes that I do reach for often. But again, there are a couple that I don't reach for all the time. So again, I'll leave links for all those down below. Now, finally, I want to talk about Real Techniques brushes and EcoTools brushes. So those, in my frame of thinking, are the two most affordable yet high quality brush brands at the drugstore. But you didn't see a lot of those brushes featured, and that is because they kind of drive me nuts, because most of their brushes only come in sets. So I did show you this set from EcoTools because I just absolutely love this brush. And I feel like this one, even though it's smaller, you can still use it in the same way. And so I feel like the cost of this set can still be worth it. Now, EcoTools also sells really nice eye brushes. They're all very super soft, but again, they only come in sets. So given the descriptions that I gave you today will hopefully help you as you're looking through those sets. If you're looking for a firm shader brush and maybe a blending brush or a pencil brush, you can look for those sets that maybe contain those brushes, but you are going to have brushes in those sets that you might not reach for all the time. So just keep that in mind. Now, Real Techniques, I have kind of a love-hate relationship with, because they stop making so many of my favorite brushes. And I had pulled out several more from Real Techniques to share with you today, and they're no longer available. So they do make great quality brushes, but they also like to change them up and tweak them. And even sometimes they'll call them the same brush, and I'm like, nope, this is not the same brush. And also, aside from some of their larger face brushes, their eye brushes, to my knowledge, pretty much all come in sets. So if you're getting those sets on sale, it might not matter as much if there's a couple in there that you're not going to use on a regular basis. But I do have a number of their brushes that I love, but again, they either only come in sets, or like the Instapop brushes, they become very difficult to find. So this Instapop brush set is one that I would highly recommend if you can find it. It reminds me of the Angie from Hot and Flashy brush in the fact that it is kind of tapered down on the side, and I do love it for concealer. But again, that set is a little hard to come by. And then these are three of the, I think there's like 6 or 7 brushes that come in this set. And I do love these three. You can see there's this little small flat shader. There is a kind of smudger brush that's similar to the BK Beauty one. And then there is this great brush, which is, it says it's a full crease brush, which it is. It's a little more dense than the Morphe one, but it is a great brush, especially when you're working with cream products. But again, you have to buy it in a full set. So I did not want to end this video without mentioning those two brands, because they are really good quality, and I have had a number of brushes from both of those brands for years. They do hold up well, but again, you're going to have to just be prepared to buy a full set for maybe 2 or 3 brushes that you want. All right, guys, so that wraps up this video. I know there was a ton of information shared here, and you might need to watch it again, but hopefully it will help make sense of what kinds of brushes to look for and what you might need to add to your collection. As always, in the description box below, I will list all of the brushes that I talked about today, but I'll also break them out into the categories. But I will also link to a video about how to care for your brushes, because no matter how much money you spend on your brushes, if you don't properly care for them, they are not going to last, and you definitely want them to do that. So I will link a recent video I did all about how I clean my brushes. So hopefully that is also helpful to you. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.